Yes, yes, people, we are back live on the channel for the F1 Abu Dhabi Grand Prix review. The final race has been concluded. The F1 season has officially been concluded. McLaren are constructors champions, and as a Ferrari fan myself, I can only say props to them. Congratulations to McLaren because they've deserved it. They've been the best they've been the best car all year. They've been they deserve it. They won it for a reason, and yeah, they're the champions. But as a Ferrari fan, I can only be very hopeful of how we'll do next year, and hopefully things get better. But joining me to discuss the same panels yesterday, the two legends themselves, King Augustia. What are you guys saying? Both good? Did you enjoy the
It's
race?
over. It's over. It is over. One of the most exciting, entertaining seasons of Formula One I've ever watched personally is over. Or was it 7 different race winners for the first time in history? And not just 7 different race winners, it was 7 different race winners twice. So, what an entertaining season. What a
Yep,
surprise. And
very.
Abu Dhabi delivered on all fronts. There was many overtakes for the first time, I think, in a while. And look, the championship, say what you want, it did go down to the wire. And a lot of memories, but push come to shove, it was an end of an era for almost everyone on the grid. So excited to be here. Looking forward to this. And I do think we need a 98-day break because this season has been really, really intense and congested. So I'm looking forward to the break. But one last time this season, guys, let's run it back.
Let's run it back. King, did you enjoy the race? How are you doing? Um, Finally, the season's over. We can go into the off season and talk and relax. It's done.
Yeah. I'm excited to be here, excited to talk F1. It was a really exciting race. It started off really well. A lot of drama happened in the race, which I was happy about. A lot of overtaking, a lot of good driving, and yeah, it was to be honest, it was more exciting than I expected it to be for the final race. I wasn't expecting too much. I was expecting McLaren just to breeze on home, but it never happened like that. But yeah, it's a great season. Congrats to McLaren. Um, Congrats to Verstappen again for his title, and yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens in the future. And it was an ending of an era for many drivers. Many different teams are changing up, and it's going to be exciting to talk about the race today because I enjoyed it a lot.
Completely hear that, and yeah, we'll get into it. Um, where should we start? Obviously, we start with Lando Norris, the race winner. Um, that's the number one priority. Lando Norris won the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, which sealed McLaren's constructors championship. Augustia, I'll start off with you first. Lando Norris was exceptional from the very, very start. Didn't lose a place, didn't gain, didn't do anything.
Mm-hmm.
Was on top from the very, very start. Let's actually talk about. You know what it is? Let's actually talk about the start of the race because the start of the race was actually very, very was crazy. It kind of gave Ferrari fans a bit of a false hope in the sense that Oscar Piastri got knocked down to the very, very back. Verstappen, the Ferrari fan as a young kid, has just given Ferrari fans a glimmer of hope, and then it all came crashing down at the end. But let's talk about it from the start because the start is where obviously give you props to Lando Norris first before you go on. But the start was very, very interesting. The start had like all the yellow flags and all this, the safety car came out, and right from the get go the race got interesting. Go on, bro. The floor is yours.
Yeah, look, I think I'm going to go make a very bold claim here. You guys are probably going to disagree. And again, this is right after the race, so it is still somewhat of a raw reaction. And after the race, you're a little bit more impulsive than rational. I would go on a limb and say this is one of, if not, Lando Norris's greatest ever race. Now, hear me out. Yes, he is on pole. Yes, he has the fastest car. However, you mentioned the start, Ekevin. What happened in the start? Max Verstappen completely dive bombed on Oscar Piastri, unprovoked. There was no reason to do it. He's in no fight, but that's who Max is. He's an aggressive driver, and whenever there isn't a gap, wherever there is a gap, he takes it. He embodies the Ayrton Senna mindset on steroids, Max Verstappen. So he took it, and unfortunately, Oscar Piastri was victim. He was a casualty there. It ruined his race. He was never going to come back after that deficit. And nice to see Max apologizing in the paddock. It's rare that Max does accept accountability in that instances, but kudos to him. He is maturing as it goes on. But going back to Lando Norris, I do think this is arguably his greatest ever race win, just because when the pressure's at its highest, when the stakes, the motives, and incentives are there, that's when diamonds are made. That's when champions are formed. And throughout the season, one of our biggest criticisms of Lando Norris is, yes, he's a great driver. He's an exceptional qualifier. But look at his quali to race conversion rate. I think he's only converted one of his pole positions to victories, and most of the time he drops back at the start. So today, Oscar Piastri was out of the race, and it was 2 Ferraris versus 1 McLaren. Charles Leclerc, starting in P19, gains an insane amount of places on the first lap, 12 if I'm not mistaken. So it's a 2v1 fight. And Lando Norris knows any mistake, that's the Constructors' Championship gone. And with the amount of narratives that are in his head, the press, the scrutiny, the critics, everyone's saying Lando doesn't have what it takes to compete with Max. Lando doesn't have what it takes to win a championship. We have been critical of Lando. Sure, Ekevin, as you make the point here, if we look at it retrospectively, you would say McLaren have had a very successful season, no doubt. The first time since the Ron Dennis era where they've won a Constructors' Championship. Very, very impressive to go from 4th to 1st. You look at the ascendancy during the Zach Brown era.
1998, where I wasn't even born.
And you know who also wasn't born when McLaren won their Constructors' title? Both drivers, Lando and Oscar, which is astonishing to me. So, yeah, I mean, they've had such an incredible journey. You talk about the Renault engines, struggle with there. And then last season, they were 9th at the beginning of the season. They were rock bottom, basically. So just within a matter of a year, you've gone from last to first. Insane. But going back to this race, all the pressure's on Lando Norris. McLaren, fastest car. But they still hadn't wrapped up the championship by now. So easily, any small mistake, he would have capitulated and costed McLaren the title, but he didn't. He held firm, and he only grew stronger and stronger and stronger. And even if you look deeper into the race, the second stint, Lando managed his tires far better than Leclerc and Carlos Sainz did. Their tires degraded quicker. So kudos to Lando Norris, a very, very impressive drive, very commanding, very competent and capable. And this is great for his confidence because he has a championship under his belt. And objectively, if you were to make the case of whose career would you rather have so far, Lando Norris or Charles Leclerc, of course you'd pick Lando because he has a championship to his belt. So it does the world of wonders for him and his confidence heading into next season. But so once again, congratulations to McLaren. Congratulations to Lando Norris, Oscar Piastri, the best second driver this season, no doubt about that. And kudos to Zach Brown because it's been a struggle, especially revitalizing your identity after the years of dominance with Senna, Prost, and Lewis Hamilton, and then coming into basically, like Ekman said, 26 years of no titles. So for Zach Brown to finally jump over all the hurdles, kudos to McLaren, a very well-deserved title, by far the best constructor since Miami, and it bodes well for them in the future.
Big up Narid every time, bro. Always, man. Yeah, big up lads. Congrats McLaren, Liverpool, biggest winners this game week, even without kicking a ball. Big up Chelsea also, though. Spurs being Spurs, you just typical. Sorry, I was gonna put it in. Yeah, bro, leave it in, bro. Leave it here, bro. Big up for you. Big up, bro. Thank you for supporting, man, every time. Always love. Yeah, King, over to you, man. Floor is yours. Obviously, McLaren champions. The race got interesting from the start. Talk about Lando, and then talk about, and we'll get onto the race in more depth.
I agreed with a lot of Augusti has said in terms of Lando. I think I'm not sure if it's his greatest performance, but it was a great performance in terms of he had to be perfect in everything he did.
It's his greatest. I'll just put it out there. It's his greatest race win ever.
I'm not sure about that. I'd have to actually look back at some of his race wins after go back in the memory bank. But in terms of,
sorry to interrupt you, bro. What I meant was I'm talking about race win in terms of the event that happened after the race. So he sealed McLaren's championship while also winning the race. So that's why I said this is his greatest race. I'm not saying it's his best performance on the grid. I'm saying it's his greatest ever race in terms of success afterwards. You know what I mean? That's what I meant. I'm not saying performance wise it's his greatest. No, talking about just whatever happened after the race and however he and what he won, what he did for his team. That's where that's where I mean. But sorry, bro. Sorry to interrupt you, bro. Carry on, bro.
That's so good. That's so good. No, I would agree with on that point. But in regards to the race and the first lap was very interesting. Max being over aggressive driver saw the gap. He took out Piastri and Sainz was very clever into funneling through that gap. To get second. And it's funny because Piastri also crashed in. The other thing that happened that people don't talk about is that Piastri also crashed into the back of Colapinto. So that not only was he taken out, he was also given a 10-second penalty. So there was not really much he could do in order to help Lando and his team. And um, it was very unfortunate what happened to him. But you know, in terms of that race, I think it was a very unlucky race for him. In terms of Lando, I would say it was a great win in terms of what he did what he needed to do. Obviously, he had the best car on the day. The McLaren was over the weekend has been the best car, and all he needed was just to get that win. Um, he had a great start. He got away real quickly. He also maintained the gap throughout. Um, in terms of the race pace, in terms of his speed, he's probably the best driver on the grid outright. And I think for a lot of people looking at his race, you'd think, oh no, it's nice, it's simple, he's up front, he doesn't have to do much. But because of such of the tire degradation, of the fact that he doesn't have the rear gunner, the fact that he has to be perfect each and every lap, and especially when it came down to it, when it came to track limits, a lot of guys were getting caught for track limits as well. That's another possibility that you could get penalized for that. So for him to come in with the win his team the constructors championship, get the 25 points they needed, not to make mistakes, not to allow for Carlos to even come close, even when there was a point after he came out and Carlos was pushing his tires to the limit. Carlos couldn't compete with him because he was just that good on his tires, that good in the race, that good on his speed, and he did everything he needed to do in order for McLaren to win that constructors. In terms of him and his season, it's probably been his best season to this point. Obviously, finishing second to Max and having the best car in the latter part of the season. I think he'd be probably upset that he didn't win more races, of course, across the season. But it gives a good platform for McLaren going forward with this win, with their driver being number 2. It gives them more things to kind of want. It's not like they've completed the sport. They didn't get both of them. They didn't get both the championships. So it gives them something to compete for. And I think next season is going to be very exciting. I think Lando has matured. He's shown he's a leader. He's shown that he's the leader that the team needs. I think his relationship with Oscar Piastri has been rocky at times, but the maturity to let him get past him at the end of a sprint race, it shows that he's following the team orders. He's becoming a more mature young man in the sport, and you're seeing him grow up over the years in front of our eyes. And I think the next step is just a bit more lethality, a bit more aggressiveness when it comes to facing the likes of Max and Lewis in the future, because they're not going to be nicey, friendly. And as much as you are friends with Max on that track, there are no friends. So I think that's the only thing he has to probably improve on in terms of the dark arts of the sport, in terms of understanding that if there's a gap, if there's a way to fight it, if there's a way to get away with things regardless of the rules, I think he'll be a guy that will be looked as the lead driver for McLaren for the title next year. And I think it was the perfect race for him. And there's nothing bad I can say. He had a great start. Every time he came out from the pit stop, he was from the pit stop. He was quick, and there's no bad words about it, this performance. And for me, Lando has a bit more to improve before he can compete with Max and Lewis and become a world champion. He's still got a bit more to go, but it's it's a promising look to see what McLaren can be next season. So it should be exciting for McLaren fans. And yeah, Lando will definitely be a guy that we'll be looking at to lead his team over the next course of years as well. So I think his leadership's got better. He's become a better driver, and I think this race win encapsulates everything that he has become. Even when the chips are down, even when his teammates getting the bad luck, bad end of the stick, he comes with the points. He comes with the win, and it's great to see from that young man as well.
Yeah, I agree. It's only just a start for Lando Norris. He's definitely gonna go for much more than this. Drivers' Championship. He's already eyeing that. That's his goal for next year. He's gonna compete with Lewis, Charles Leclerc, Max Verstappen. It's gonna be a 4-horse race next year, in my opinion, for the Drivers' Championship, and it's gonna be very, very exciting. I can't wait for next season, and we're gonna be doing a lot more previews, reviews, and a lot of more F1 content next year on here and in sports. Please make sure you're locked in and subscribe. In terms of how the race went, because the start was very, very, very like dramatic. As always, the start of the races are always dramatic. It's always jumbled up. It's always like, it lights out, away we go, and then Lando Norris starts fast, and then you got Max Verstappen, getting into these little accidents. The way Max Verstappen he hit Oscar Piastri, that 10 second penalty was warranted. I think it was, and Carlos Sainz and Charles Leclerc just did their thing, really. Like, I think they just did what they had to do, and they were the best two drivers on the grid. If it wasn't for Charles Leclerc's 10 grid penalty, different result. Maybe you never know. Different result, because Charles Leclerc had to come from 19th to finish second. Who'd have thought this guy would have finished on the podium today? Like, did we think about Charles Leclerc finishing in the podium? I didn't think so. None of us predicted this yesterday. We didn't think about it yesterday. We thought about Carlos Sainz getting it. I thought about the two McLarens getting the podium. But Max Verstappen had an accident with Oscar Piastri at the start of the race, and that's where I said that. That's why I've always said, and I always made myself clear in this one. The start of the race is always the most nervy. It's always the most scary. It's the scariest part of the race. It's the most dramatic part, because that's where you have to deal with cars right behind you, right on your rear mirror. So yeah, it is what it is. Lando Norris won McLaren the championship, and what else could I really say? I mean, congratulations to them. They deserved it. In terms of the start of the race, yeah, Oscar Piastri getting his penalty, Max Verstappen getting his penalty, and Charles Leclerc's insane driving got him to the podium. Talk about the race as a whole. Talk about what was your most interesting bit of the race? What was your biggest takeaway from this race? Apart from Lando Norris winning the race, yeah, the other 19 drivers, or the other 17, excuse me, because two of them got sent crashed out, had a DNF. What was your biggest takeaway from this? Auguste, I'll start with you.
That's a good question.
Talk about the race as a whole, from the start, and give your give your points and give your biggest takeaways, please. Go on.
I guess the biggest takeaway would be what we've already discussed. Lando Norris has clearly proved that under pressure, in a championship situation, he can be calm, he can be composed, and he can control the situation. So that's a big takeaway, because that goes into next season, where we have seen that Lando Norris can adjust and adapt and produce at the highest level. So that's one big takeaway. Two, I'm going to actually look at the midfield. I'm going to mention Alpine. King, you've talked very highly of Alpine recently on our shows. I think towards the back end of the season, since Brazil, Alpine have undoubtedly been the fifth best constructor. and it's not even close. The pace that Pierre Gasly had during the first and second part of the race, particularly when it was defending George Russell, very, very impressive. The way he manages to place the car in the right positions on the straights and heading into the overtaking zones is very, very impressive. He's a very robust and focused driver, that too. Another takeaway would be, as you said, Ekevin, let's not discount what Carlos Sainz and Charles Leclerc did today. This was as a team, one of their best performances in a high pressure situation. Now, I want to talk a little bit about Ferrari here. Sure, it's bittersweet, like you said, but damn, what an impressive race. Sure, Charles Leclerc did make up around 12 places on the opening lap, but to sustain that pace and really close in on Lando Norris from a Carlos Sainz standpoint, it is impressive. I just want to add one thing, though. I wonder, when it comes to Ferrari, you two are the Ferrari fans here. I'm not suggesting that Ferrari screwed up their strategy tonight. Not at all. Because, like I said yesterday, McLaren had one hand and four fingers on the Constructors' Trophy. They just consolidated today. However, I wonder, with around 15 laps to go, everyone had pitted conventionally. We talked about how if Ferrari wanted to win the championship, they had to subvert the status quo. There was I think it was, if I'm not mistaken, a 5 to 6 second gap between Lando Norris and Carlos Sainz, between first and second. Sainz was never ever good.
How many laps to go? You're talking about 15 laps to go?
10 to 15 laps to go.
Around 4 to 5, because I remember Carlos Sainz, or was it Carlos Sainz that just pitted? No, sorry, it wasn't Carlos Sainz. It was Lando Norris that just pitted, but then it was a big gap, and then Carlos Sainz had cut that, and then he came out just right behind Lando Norris, because Lando Norris was leading the race by a lot, and then it got tight from there. It was like a 1.5 second, and then later on it became, like 4 and then 5, yeah. But yeah, go on, bro.
Sure, but whatever it was, 15 laps to go. The top three were Lando Norris, Carlos Sainz, and Charles Leclerc. The gap between Lando Norris and Carlos Sainz was around 4 to 5 seconds, well out of DRS range. They had already been around 20 laps in their second stint, so their tires were already degrading. The gap between Carlos Sainz to Charles Leclerc was a pit stop. I'm just suggesting here, again, we don't have the sim data available. What if Carlos Sainz, around lap 45, pitted for softs? He had laser fresh soft tires, and he pitted. He would have still come out second, maybe third behind Charles Leclerc, but they would have let him pass because he's on fresher tires. I just wonder, if you put Carlos Sainz on the softs, would he have potentially overtaken a tired, degrading Lando Norris towards the end? I'm not sure. Maybe not. Also, were Ferrari balancing, hey, what is the probability of a safety car versus Carlos Sainz overtaking Lando Norris on fresh versus old tires? I don't know. But I'm just thinking, could a Ferrari gone a bit more ballsy? Because a 1 and 3, a Sainz 1, Leclerc 3 would have won them the championship. So maybe they could have gone ballsy. I don't know. But eventually for Ferrari, look, heading into next season, as we've talked about on the show, you have the best driver pairing when it comes to winning. Lewis Hamilton, the most experienced, successful, and winningest driver ever, teaming up with Charles Leclerc, who is the most experienced among people in his generation, Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri, in their respective teams, and is completely ready to compete. So yeah, it bodes well for Ferrari. Their trajectory is trending upwards, their car is trending upwards, and the silver lining with finishing second means you get more wind tunnel development time next season. So yeah, bittersweet, but I just wonder, could Ferrari have been a bit more ballsy tonight? I'm not sure. King, Ekevin, what do you guys think?
For me, in terms of being ballsy, I think they should have started Charles in the hard ties in the beginning. I think he could have still got that. He got up to position 8 with mediums, but I think it would have been interesting to see if he had the second stint in mediums instead of the first stint, and how much quicker he could have been. And then yeah, I would have liked to seen Carlos maybe try and go into softs or do something around 20 laps left when there's still time left on the table for him. Because even if he had to pass, was fourth at the time. Fourth was it George? I think, was it George or someone like that? But whoever was fourth was at the time.
It was George Russell.
It was George, right? So even if he had to pass him, I would think it would have been easy for him to pass him. So it would have been interesting with 20 laps to go if they could put him on to, if they did a 2-stopper and see what he could have done. But yeah, I just think Lando was just too good on the day. So even if they made those decisions, I'm not sure if it would have stopped Lando winning the race. I don't think so. Because I just think he had the perfect car. They were the fastest all across the weekend, and I think he was just too good for that one evening. You needed him to make mistakes, and he didn't. He was perfect from start to finish. That was a performance that you would see from the likes of Max or Hamilton in that one race when you need it. He did it, and it bodes well for the next seasons for him, because if he can continue to do that, then he'll definitely be a title contender in the future. But for Ferrari, I think, yeah, they should have been unconventional from the start. I think because Hamilton started on the hards, and then you see how quick he was on the mediums towards the end, where everyone was moving slow. That they should have done that for Charles, and then they should have probably made another move with Carlos. But I think they were too scared to, and I think that's probably something that they have to improve on next season.
I hear that. I mean, definitely I agree with you on the tire strategy. They need to do better with that, because Ferrari this season I've screwed up many times on tire strategies, because I remember that Baku, Azerbaijan. I will never forget that race where Ferrari switched to the hard tires, and then that's where they kind of lost grip of the race, and then that's where Oscar Piastri took advantage and won the race against Charles Leclerc. Yeah, against Charles Leclerc, which for me, or was it Carlos Sainz? I can't remember who it was. Whoever it was, yeah, Ferrari could have won that race. That was Ferrari's race to win. And obviously that didn't happen. That was an error. That was an error from the driver. That was an error from the team rather than the driver. I think for me today, looking at Ferrari's strategies, the one-stop strategy really worked well. It worked in Ferrari's favor, and I guess they called it out yesterday. He called it yesterday as well. The one-stop strategy will work. He said we were talking about it on chat. He said that Ferrari's one-stop strategy will work, and it did. Obviously, they didn't win the race, but to get double podium, right, where Charles Leclerc was all the way in 19th, and that one-stop strategy worked. I think the strategies worked well today. I think the hard tires were good, because today for me the track was very slippery. Anyone could have lost. Anyone's time could have been deleted from the race, or not deleted from the race. Excuse me. Anyone's time, they could have had a time penalty.
Can I just correct you 1 second, Kevin?
Many times, because sorry. Let me just point this out, because I never expected Charles Leclerc to get into the podiums today. I'm sure none of you did as well, right? But the way he started the race, and the way he finished it, even though he finished 22 seconds, 21 seconds behind Carlos Sainz, 22 seconds behind Carlos Sainz, to come all the way from 19th to finish third, when the odds were stacked against you, I have to give credit where it's due. Because if Ferrari didn't have that 10-grid penalty, I think that it could have been different results this week. I think the results could have been different. Because having to start from the back of the grid and having to start at the front of the grid is very different. It's very different. So the results could have been different, but I'm not taking anything away from McLaren. I'm not taking anything away from McLaren today. Not taking anything away from Lando Norris. They deserved it. And because the start of the race was very intense. Like I said before. However, you also have to look into the fact that this season as a whole, it just sums up where Ferrari are. It just sums it all up. They got second, but there's still a lot of strategic errors in this team. There's still a lot of strategic errors. There's still a lot of mistakes that they need to fix next season. Because when you started the season, your car looked like fucking rock bottom. Ferrari's car looked like they weren't even going to finish in the top 5 at the start of the year. I was like, race 1 did Ferrari get podium in the first race of the year? I think they did, right? In the first race of the year, they got podium, didn't they? In the first race. I think they got like what, third? I can't remember. But yeah, like I said, strategic errors has costed Ferrari in a lot of races this year, and I'm still gonna call it out as it is. I'm still gonna call it out because I know the year is over, and still next season it has to be corrected. I'm sure King, you also feel the same because we're both Ferrari fans. We've seen how many errors this team has made. We've seen the errors that they've made strategically, and the driver he needs next season, going to next season, Lewis needs to demand more from this team. I think Charles Leclerc also needs to be a bit more demanding. I think with a new team, with a new structure next season, Ferrari have with I think one guy joining from Red Bull as well, and obviously Lewis joining, Ferrari needs to be serious. They need to be serious. But I sorry, I think I went off topic there, but still, I just wanted to call it out because the season as a whole, mistakes are still there, and fix it going to next season would be good. But yeah, sorry, Gussie, you wanted to say something?
No, I just wanted to correct you. Yesterday I said whatever Ferrari do, they have to do the opposite to McLaren. They have to subvert the status quo. The one stopper would have been effective. The medium to hard had Ferrari had track position. If they had track position, it's basically like holding a serve in tennis. You're holding serve. You don't have to subvert the status quo. You reinforce it and you hold position. You convert pole to championship. They didn't. I actually am going to go out on a limb, and I agree with King. The only reason Charles Leclerc really made up that ground was because of the first lap incident. And who was the victim? A McLaren driver. So yes, Ekevin, you said, oh, what if Carlos Sainz and Leclerc were in their true positions, let's say within the top 4 or 5? Both McLarens would have been still. And then again, it goes to a circumstantial situation here. What if Charles Leclerc was in there? Would have Oscar Piastri had an incident? I'm not sure. You see what I mean?
No.
See, so that's the issue, Ekevin. Maybe Ferrari would have got more points from the race. But McLaren...
But didn't Oscar Piastri and Max Verstappen start at where was Piastri? Piastri was second, wasn't he?
Piastri was second. Max was fourth.
And Verstappen stormed through. So they would have been next to each other.
Yeah, and if they had been next to each other, Max wouldn't have stormed through on him, right? So it's all accordingly and circumstantially. But yeah, going back to your point here, I don't know if there was no incident hypothetically on the first lap. Charles was the only driver who wasn't on the mediums, was I think Lewis Hamilton. So I don't think Leclerc would have made up the ground he did. I think by the end of his stint, he probably would have been touching the points. So I don't know if he even would have got to third because his pace in both stints wasn't necessarily remarkable, wasn't outstanding to my knowledge. Whereas someone like Lewis Hamilton, for example, hammer time, the final time that was ever said from Bono in his second stint, that was ruthless. That was remarkable. That was vintage Hamilton. And had Leclerc had that luxury in his second stint, if he went from hard to medium, he maybe could have finished higher. Maybe could have even been on Lando's back. Who knows? So yeah, I think Ferrari just had to subvert the status quo, and they didn't do that. That's what I just have to correct you, because I did say the one stopper was good, but only if they had track position, and they didn't.
Yeah, I agree. I'd like to add, in regards to strategy, I don't think Ferrari's strategy has been the thing that stopped this season. I think for me this season it's been more driver error. When it's come to losing points, crashing in practice 1 and 2 and 3 should be minimal. For me, I think the crash that Carlos had with Sergio, like in the midpoint of the season, that was another error. I think for me, Ferrari's biggest issue is driver error in terms of crashing at the wrong time, in terms of getting off at the wrong time, in terms of doing the wrong things in terms of the races as drivers. And I need and I expect more from Charles next season in terms of consistency and quality, because I think he could have been closer to Lando and Max if that was there. And then the second thing for me is just Ferrari never really had the best car on the grid at any point. So considering all that, to finish second ahead of Red Bull, for me, I think was really good. And you can see that if you have 2 good drivers and a decent enough car, you can be up there in terms of the constructors. But yeah, we need to do more to improve the car. I think The other mistakes made was not so much on the strategy, but in terms of the car development. We had a hiccup like in the middle part of the season where we were nowhere near anyone, and that kind of stopped us from getting points. That was the point of the season when Mercedes were getting wins, McLaren was up there. You know, when you had that kind of part of the season where Ferrari seemed like they were nowhere. So Ferrari needs to be better with the development, better with keeping up to pace with the top riders. And when it comes to, if you're not winning, at least finish second, third, fourth, because that's going to be the difference between constructors and no constructors is consistency. And we're going to talk about that even more when we talk about Sergio and him probably leaving Red Bull, because consistency is what these teams want. So for Charles, for Hamilton next season, consistency and dominance and being more aggressive in terms of what they do on the weekend, not messing up in quali, because we messed up a lot in quali, not messing up in the race and actually being perfect in every aspect of the sport in order for you to
Being
win.
more careful with battery changes as well, because this last race costed us big time.
Yeah,
Big time.
Yeah.
Because if we hadn't done the battery change, Ferrari could have been in the top 10.
yeah, definitely. And then
Easily
it's just about all these things coming together to be better at it, and less crashes, less just making sure that we improve on this season, because I think finishing second is cool in terms of constructors, but we need to be top next season. I think we have the car, we have the team now, we have the teammates that can compete with anyone. And I put the lineup of Lewis and Charles against anyone and say they're better driver to driver. You look at Lewis, he's probably better than every other driver on that grid, bar maybe Max at this point. But a confident Lewis, a Lewis with the right car, a Lewis that believes he's fast again, yeah, no one can compete with him when he's on that kind of mode. And you saw today, as Augustia said, the best driver on that grid for me personally was Lewis Hamilton. And the way he ducked down George Russell to let him know I'm the big dog at the end. And he didn't pass him on the straight, he passed him around him to get that fourth position. That overtake at the end for me shows that Lewis still has it. He's still the big dog in the sport.
I think
it's going to be very interesting as well next season with the big teams and how their lineups are going to work, because obviously Red Bull and Mercedes are going to have a different lineup each, and McLaren, Ferrari's going to have a different lineup, so that's going to be the thing. And the other thing is making sure that you decide at what point who the number one driver is. From race weekend to race weekend, there shouldn't be a thing of allowing your drivers to race each other. That's happened too much over this course of the season for my liking. At some point, if one driver's ahead of the other, just let them go, because tire degradation is so key to this season and next season that you can't afford to be racing with your own teammate, because that will just lose you both seconds and allow for others to catch up. And we've lost races and positions because of that. So I think there needs to be a concerted effort on knowing who's the number one driver on the season as a whole and on the race weekend by race weekend. If Charles is the better driver over the weekend, give him priority. If Lewis is the better driver over the weekend, give him priority and stop allowing them to race each other, because for me, that doesn't help the team in the long run. And you've seen throughout the past seasons, anytime teammates are driving each other, that leads to crashes. That's what happened with Alpine. That's what's happened with Ferrari in the past. You can see it with McLaren. Every time they come close to each other, it's not a good look, and it loses you points across the season. So I think that's another thing that Ferrari need to focus on actually having the number one driver of the weekend and of the season. If like halfway through the season Lewis is winning the championship, all guns blazing onto Lewis. Not in my opinion, because it doesn't make sense for you to give comforts to Charles Leclerc if he's not competing at that top level. If Lewis is up the top of the championship, do everything you need to do to have him to win, because Red Bull's going to do that with Max. Mercedes are going to do that with George, and McLaren are definitely going to do that with Lando. And if you want the singles title, you're going to need to pick one and decide relatively early on in the season who's the better driver, because that's probably going to cause problems if they start butting heads and thinking they're number one when they're not.
I agree with you because, before you go, guys, I just want to make this point as well.
Mhm.
Yeah, I agree completely because too many times where Charles Leclerc was told to let Carlos Sainz go through. It's about, it's the thing is, like drivers are being, they're telling drivers to be a bit too nice as well. They're telling drivers to be a bit like, please let this guy through. Please, it's a bit of bias. You know what I'm saying? It's a certain level of bias in Ferrari. It was like 1 week they're rooting for Leclerc, 1 week they're rooting for Carlos Sainz. It's almost as if like they're very, very they're very inconsiderate. Some of these teams, I feel like they're more. How do you say it? I feel like they're more. They're more solely focused on one, but they're forgetting about the other. You get what I'm saying? Too many times it's happened. Too many times. I've seen Charles Leclerc get upset a couple of weeks ago because he was supposed to let Carlos Sainz go through. Drivers are not supposed to race each other. I agree. But there has to be a certain level of balance. And Ferrari don't have that level of balance. They're always so focused on one driver. And especially with Lewis Hamilton going there next season, and he being the biggest name, Charles Leclerc is going to feel more left out. And it's not me saying Lewis Hamilton's a bad signing. No, it's not. But the importance and the focus on Lewis Hamilton is going to be there way too often next season. More often than Charles Leclerc's presence and notice. It'll be there way too often. Charles Leclerc is going to get less notice compared to what he has, because the level of drivers that Carlos Sainz and Charles Leclerc are, they're quite the same. They're quite on the same level, right? They're quite on the same level. So bringing in Lewis Hamilton is only going to give more attention to him, rather than giving the focus on Charles Leclerc. I think Ferrari needs to fix that as well. Back then, they used to give Michael Schumacher the clean slate because he was the best driver, right? No one's gonna match him back then. But they also focused on Kimi Räikkönen. They also gave attention to Kimi Räikkönen. Ferrari finished 1 and 2 quite often. They did it 1 and 2s. Sometimes they just give Charles Leclerc the benefit of the doubt and be like, okay, here you go, and then we'll leave Carlos Sainz out there to rot. Many times I've seen over the years it's happened. It's happened over the years many times. I've seen Charles Leclerc get all the attention. Carlos Sainz was left out. And then one time in one of the British race, I think it was at Silverstone. I can remember 2022. Carlos Sainz overtook Charles Leclerc. Carlos Sainz was racing against Charles Leclerc, and he overtook Charles Leclerc. I'm not mad at that. I'm just mad that Ferrari ignored Charles Leclerc and let Carlos Sainz race him. Rather than giving Charles Leclerc a bit of an edge in the Drivers' Championship, they let Carlos Sainz win by not pitting Charles Leclerc during the safety car, by giving or the red flag, by giving Carlos Sainz the sole focus. This is what I'm saying. There's not much focus on drivers. You know what I'm saying? There needs to be a level of balance. One race this guy, one race the other guy. Not 4, 5, 6, not at least 10, 15 races that guy, and then a few races this guy. It's happened with Mercedes, George Russell, and Lewis Hamilton many times. They gave the focus on Lewis Hamilton. They didn't focus on George Russell. There's been some times where they did that, but that's not. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, because Lewis Hamilton's way above George Russell. But now there needs to be a certain level of balance and focus on both the drivers. If you guys understand what I'm saying, because there's so much there's bias nowadays in F1. Too much bias now. it's bias. That's what I think, and the issue needs to be fixed. But I guess go on.
Look, a few days ago, when we were dissecting what went wrong for Lando and McLaren and the drivers, I mentioned two reasons. Mentality, because they keep talking about themselves as a midfield team. They're not a midfield team, they're their team. The second reason was ruthlessness. I mentioned many occasions. Look at Monza, for example, where Lando Norris was the driver competing for the championship, but Oscar Piastri finished on the front row ahead of Lando. Things like this across the season come back to haunt you. It's unnecessary. You could easily gain, I think, at least 15, 20, 30 extra points. But with Ferrari, I'm actually going to abandon that. I like what both of you are saying. I think it applies to 9 of the 10 teams on the grid. I don't think it applies to Ferrari. I think with this duo, Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc, this is our generation's version of Hamilton Rosberg, Hamilton Alonso, Senna Prost. I think those are two drivers at the highest level. Lewis Hamilton, arguably the greatest driver of all time. Most race starts, most wins, most poles, most fastest laps, most points in Formula One, over 200 podiums. The guy has more podiums than most drivers have race starts in Formula One. So Lewis Hamilton, we all know his pedigree. Push comes to shove. When there is a championship fight and he has the car, there is no better driver you could ask for in Formula One history. No doubt about that. But yeah, I will get onto that, Kevin. But with Charles Leclerc, he is ready. This is the Monegasque prince's time to claim his crown, to get on his throne, to ascend to the throne, be the hero of Ferrari. That's why they brought him in here for. I don't know if you guys saw Carlos Sainz in his press conference before Abu Dhabi. He was asked, "How did you feel when you were replaced?" He said, "Initially, I was hurt. Of course, you're being replaced at the biggest team in motorsport history. It is definitely something that stings, right? It's a once in a lifetime opportunity to represent."
I really love Carlos Sainz.
But what Carlos Sainz said was really, really mature, and I really appreciated what he said. Not many drivers would have the emotional EQ to say what he did. Long story short, Carlos Sainz said, if there were any two drivers that are ahead of me in Ferrari, it would be these two, because Charles Leclerc is the prince of Ferrari. He's been with Ferrari since he's been basically a kid. They've nurtured him. They've developed him. He's blossomed there, and he's turned into this commercial superstar, and he does it on the track. He's one of the greatest qualifiers ever. And then the one who's replacing Carlos Sainz is the greatest of all time. So I think, imagine telling Lewis Hamilton in the second half of the season, hey, I'm going to ask you to swap positions with Leclerc. I think the only time you can do that is when it is all but mathematically sure that one of the drivers is in the fight and the other isn't. Otherwise, you got to let them fight. And I think next season, I do think Leclerc will have the upper edge, at least for the first half, because it's going to be an adjustment period for Lewis. But you cannot be telling either of the drivers, because they're number one drivers. They would be a number one driver at any other team on the grid, except maybe Red Bull. But yeah, so long story short, I agree with both of you for 9 of the 10 teams. I do believe there needs to be more ruthlessness. If you're Red Bull, right, if you would prioritize Max Verstappen over whoever the second driver may be. If you're McLaren, you would prioritize Lando Norris over Oscar Piastri. Next season, if you're Mercedes, theoretically, unless Kimi Antonelli evolves into some Lewis Hamilton regen and has one of the greatest rookie seasons ever, you would prioritize George Russell over Kimi Antonelli. Same with Aston Martin, Alonso over Stroll, although I don't know if Lawrence Stroll has the courage to make that decision. But I do think, yeah, with Ferrari, I'm not sure you can do that at all unless it is mathematically impossible for one of the drivers to win and the other to not.
Yeah, I agree. And you were gonna make your point earlier as well? You were gonna say something before this?
I think it was basically saying this is the exception that doesn't define the rule. This is the exemplary pairing of our generation, and you cannot tell either. I mean, Ekevin, imagine you were Fred Vassar. Would you have the guts to tell one of Leclerc or Hamilton, dude, one of you has to let the other one go in the first half of the season? You can't. You can't do it until it's mathematically impossible, because these guys are born winners. They are born winners. They only compete to win, unlike almost any other driver in the grid. So I think let them fight. Let them fight, but be fair, be free, be respectful of each other.
Be equal.
Yeah, exactly.
I hear that completely. King, any points before we move on to the final topic of the day?
I I agree to a certain extent with Lewis and Charles that you're gonna have to be fair, but after maybe 3-4 races, you need to know who the driver you're gonna put the rocket behind their back after 4-5 races. By then, every race after the 5th race, if someone's doing better, then you just got to put the rocket on their back and move your team towards what they want. So it's going to be very interesting at the start to see how the relationship between Charles and Lewis forms. But it's a very delicate balance because you don't want them crashing into each other because that's going to be very costly, especially with the way the cost cap works and stuff like that. And because teammates are on the same similar kind of machinery, they're always going to be around each other. So you don't want it to get to the point where they're having animosity towards each other because of it. So yeah, you're gonna have to be very firm with them because we've seen it in many cases with when it is two elite drivers, with especially when it was Lewis Alonso, when it was Lewis Rosberg. That spilt into the garages. That spilt into other things. I mean, Rosberg won his title off the back of that kind of craziness, and it can cost the team if it's not put to bed straight away. Similar to kind of the incidences between Perez and Ocon or Ocon and Gasly. So it's a delicate balance because when it comes to motorsport, you're in a car, you're a lot more angrier because of you get that road rage. So I think Red Vasseur needs to be firm in his decision making and when he says something, if he has to come on and say something similar to how Toto Wolff is and Horner is, if it doesn't work out after this season, be ruthless enough to move one of them on or decide otherwise because this sport isn't about sentiment. It isn't about because Charles, you're the homegrown guy that you got to uh, put your arm around him and baby him. No, it's about ruthlessness. It's about winning. And Ferrari haven't done that for 20 years to the level that I grew up on them with Michael Schumacher. The last time they won the title was with Kimi, and that was one title. And that was because of our outside factors. If anything, if it wasn't for other teams messing up, I think that was the season where it was Alonso Hamilton, and they were too busy deciding whether I think it was McLaren at the time, too busy deciding who their number one driver was, and it led to Kimi winning that championship. And that can happen. You can lose a championship to a McLaren or Red Bull driver if you're not ruthless in those decision making. So Fred Vasseur, you got a lot of big choices to make over the next couple of seasons. But yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see how that dynamic continues to grow and blossom over the years. But who knows? If it may be a short one, it may be a long one. We never know when it comes to Formula One. But I'm happy to see Lewis in red, so I'm excited about that. I think as a Ferrari fan, it's just excitement, and then we'll see how the season goes for me. And also, then you got the season regulation changes in the season after that, which is going to bring in new teams, new regulations, new suppliers of engines as well. So yeah, next couple seasons of Formula One is just going to get better and better and better. So yeah, I like it. I like it a lot.
Next season will be interesting. I completely hear that. The final topic we're going to discuss today is Lewis Hamilton's exit from Mercedes, or as I put in the title, Mercedes bids farewell to Lewis Hamilton, or Lewis Hamilton bids farewell to Mercedes. Which one works better? Let me know. But Lewis Hamilton has said goodbye to Mercedes. He's going to be in the red Ferrari next year. Obviously, his final race today ended in a bit of like a gift, because he overtook his teammate George Russell, and I bet you George Russell let it slide. He'd be like, you know what, cool, it's your last race against me in the same team, so be like, you know what, calm, we'll let it slide. But Lewis Hamilton organized the dinner for the final race, so big up to Lewis Hamilton for that. Now he's joining the Ferrari, the Tifosi. Next season is going to be very, very interesting with him being at Ferrari, but we'll discuss his final race, discuss his time at Mercedes, and what an ending to a fairy tale that will be cherished forever by many F1 fans, and by many neutrals indeed. Obviously, and obviously Carlos talk about Carlos Sainz's exit as well, because I'm gonna talk about Carlos Sainz. Carlos Sainz has given everything to Fossey, and he's been nothing but exceptional. He's given his all. He's done wonders for Ferrari, and he also bids goodbye. He's going to the Williams next year. First of all, start with Lewis Hamilton. Lewis Hamilton is going to join Ferrari next year. But talk about his race and talk about his time at Mercedes. Just sum it up, and then we'll close it out there. Both of you, talk about Lewis Hamilton first, and we'll move on to Carlos Sainz. Excuse me. We're gonna see us start first.
What is there to say? The greatest, most successful, most dominant partnership in motorsport history. That is irrefutable. That is undisputed. A man with 246 race starts. I think it's 84 wins, 78 poles, over 150 podiums, 3,600 points across his career with Mercedes, 8 constructors' titles, 6 official World Drivers' Championships. It has been the most dominant partnership ever. And I think it's even more remarkable when you just look at the circumstances when Lewis first joined. If we all remember, there's a very iconic interview between Jeremy Clarkson and Lewis Hamilton on Clarkson's show, where Clarkson asked Hamilton, isn't it like moving from Manchester United to West Ham? At the time, Man United were a very good team. Maybe not today, but we were the top dogs in the world, because Lewis Hamilton went from McLaren to Mercedes. Mercedes at the time had no world championships. They were a proper midfield team. They were developing. So to go from Man United to West Ham and take West Ham to the most dominant run in Formula One history, 8 championships in a row, it is second to none. I think the only partnerships, team and player partnerships in sports history that can compare to this are Messi in Barcelona, Wayne Gretzky in the Oilers, and Tom Brady in the Patriots. Apart from that, I don't really think anybody comes close. You can make the claim that Hamilton is the best.
You mean Bruins, not Oilers?
I think it's the Oilers. I don't think it's the Bruins, but we can check. Whatever it was, irrelevant. My point being here is I don't watch NHL. I just know Wayne Gretzky, if I'm not mistaken, won 4 championships in a row. I can talk to Hamilton and Tom Brady, though. Those 4, the 4 most dominant team and player partnerships ever, I think it's astonishing. The fact that people like Nico Rosberg, who was Lewis Hamilton's arch rival during the first half of his time at Mercedes, like King mentioned, we know what happened between those two in 2016. Animosity that spilled not just on a professional level, but on a personal level that made them adversaries, from allies and friends to adversaries. So the fact that Nico Rosberg today has been gloating over the fact that Lewis Hamilton is the greatest driver of all time just shows you how talented Lewis Hamilton is. But even outside of a statistical and racing level, look at the impact he's had on Mercedes. He has made Mercedes a staple of Formula One. He has transcended the sport. He has transcended Mercedes. He has transcended this whole industry. He has brought in all the biggest names, all the biggest sponsors, he has generated a historic amount of revenue just by himself. The name Lewis Hamilton reverberates around the entire world. So kudos to Hamilton. And if you want to talk about this race today, I think vintage Hamilton. Yesterday we mentioned who is our dark horse for this race. I had Max and Lewis. I said I feel like Lewis Hamilton could finish on the podium, just because when the motives and incentives are there is no driver I trust better than Hamilton. Today there really wasn't any motive, but it was his last ever race, so you want to bow out on a high, and he did that. It was spectacular. That first stint, he made ground, he held position, he exploited and capitalized on those hard tires. And then in the second stint, it was hammer time. It was vintage. It was Vegas all over again. It was all these drives we've seen throughout the years. And what's even more interesting is if you look at Hamilton versus George Russell, since Hamilton came in 2022, Hamilton outscores George Russell 397 to 395 points in total. Now, some would say, oh, well, what do you expect? Russell was basically a rookie. Not really, but he was a young driver coming into a top team, and Hamilton's one of the best drivers ever. To that I say, if you actually look at the seasons, Hamilton has basically been used as the guinea pig. He's basically been the guy who's been given the experimental setups because Hamilton's a winner. He only cares about winning. He doesn't really care about finishing in the midfield, finishing on the podium. He actually just cares about winning. Everyone around Hamilton knows that. He himself says that. So Hamilton was the guy with the experimental setups for the bulk of 2022, even 2023. Yet he still finishes 2 points ahead of George Russell, which is credit to George Russell. Unbelievable to go toe-to-toe with Hamilton. Mega, Herculean. But still, it just shows you that Lewis Hamilton in his 5th decade of life, 40 years of age, pretty darn impressive. And then, I think Lewis Hamilton and Ferrari, his legacy, I would say he's comfortably the greatest driver of all time. And this isn't, some people would say, oh, he's Carmelton. He relies too much on the car. Mercedes gave him the best car. But look at last season. Mercedes probably had the 4th best car, and he was the only driver close to the RB19s. He was a whisker away from finishing 2nd if it wasn't for a couple of unfortunate disqualifications like in Austin or DNFs last year. So, and even just going back, like this Mercedes and Lewis Hamilton partnership didn't begin in 2013. It began 30 years ago. Lewis Hamilton and Ron Dennis at the time. Lewis Hamilton, as a youngster, courageous. For those who don't know, this is almost out of a film. Lewis Hamilton went up to Ron Dennis at a dinner one time and said, hey, can I give you my contact? I want to become a Formula One driver one day. And Ron Dennis says, contact me in a few years. What happens? He contacts Lewis in a few years. And despite all the adversity from a social level, financial level, economic level, Hamilton goes into go-karting. He dominates go-karting. And in fact, he even had a race with Michael Schumacher once, Lewis Hamilton, in 2001. A very young Lewis Hamilton and a Michael Schumacher raced in go-karting. And then he went over the European series. He dominated. He almost clean swept it. He went into F3 against people like Sebastian Vettel. F3, for those who don't know it, is basically equal machinery. So there is no discrepancy in machinery. And Hamilton won 15 of the 20 races. So Hamilton has been dominant in everything he's done in motorsport. So he's not a car-reliant guy. He maximizes the output of the car better than anybody else. So, I know I'm going on a bit of a tangent here. But my point here is Hamilton and Mercedes' legacy is by far the greatest for a constructor and driver partnership in Formula One. I would make the case that it is one of the greatest, if not the greatest ever in sports history. So, the end of an era for sure. King, I don't know what you make of that.
I forgot his teammate before George Russell.
Bottas.
Right. I completely forgot about that. I was just so solely focused on George Russell. I completely forgot that Bottas would race for Mercedes. But yeah, it is what it is. King, the floor, bro. Mercedes, and obviously, Lewis Hamilton leaving Mercedes. And also continue about Carlos Sainz. Just briefly about Carlos Sainz, and I guess I'll go back to you about Carlos Sainz, bro. Go on, King. Talk about the 2 drivers.
In terms of Lewis, for me, the partnership was the most dominant, and I agree. Because for me, if it wasn't for a couple outside factors, I think him and that team together should have won 8 titles in a row, in my opinion. I think the Rosberg title should have been his. I think that last title that went to Max should have been his. He's a 7-time world champion that should be a 10-time world champion, in my opinion. I think he should have won the title in his first season as well. If obviously McLaren didn't do him right that first season. But the fact is, anytime he has a car that can compete, he's either 1 or 2. Nothing more than that. And he is the elite driver in our sport. He's the greatest of all time. And even the last couple of years, he's been the guinea pig. Mercedes haven't been there for him in terms of the car. Anytime he has a chance to win a race, you've seen it. Even this season, he's won a couple races. When he needs to do the impossible, he can do that. And I think the ending of the partnership in the way he did, the pass that he made on George to get more points than him across their partnership, I don't think there's been a point where he has lost to a teammate in terms of when you objectively look at who's the better teammate. He's been better than Alonso, better than Rosberg, better than Bottas, better than George Russell. Any teammate you put him alongside, he's been one of the greats and the better driver on that team. No doubt. So I think he deserves more than he has got in his time at Mercedes. I think he should have won 8 in a row, as I said. And it's going to be great to see him in that red of Ferrari. I think he's had a great career at that team, and yeah, it was a strange decision to see him move from McLaren to Mercedes at the time. But my God, what a smart decision! And I think, yeah, he is bigger than the sport. He is a brand in his own right. He is to this sport what a Ronaldo or Messi is, what a Tom Brady is, what a Michael Jordan is to this sport. And it will be a shame to see when he leaves, because I think he brings so many eyes to the sport, so many fans. I think a lot of the celebrities that come for him come for Mercedes, and and I think the sport will continue to grow even further with him in the Ferrari red, including the Netflix series and everything like that. Anytime he's a part of something, and going forward, and the initiatives that he brought in terms of, inclusivity, trying to get more and more young kids, of different nature, whether they be female, different skin color, what it is, to get into this sport, because this has been for so long a white men only club, a white boys only club, and he, as you say, subverted the status quo of Formula One as a whole. I like that quote, but as a whole, that's what he's done in his time here, and what he's done in Mercedes. He's put that brand into an atmosphere that can rival with Ferrari, can rival what Red Bull have done in this sport. And when you think Formula One, now you can think Mercedes, now you can think Red Bull because of Lewis, especially with Mercedes, and Max with the Red Bull, and Vettel with the Red Bull. They are special drivers that come into this sport and put that team on the map. And that's what Lewis did for Mercedes. And yeah, man, it's great to see him come to my team, come to Ferrari. I've always cheered on for him because me being a person of color, and what he represents, being British, being black, being the only one on the court, and it kind of came to head at the end of 2021 what he has meant to the sport, and that race in Abu Dhabi, and how controversial that was. And it kind of put a lot of feelings that, outside of my fandom for Ferrari, I've always wanted him to be the best, always wanted him to win, always wanted him to be the greatest, because I believe that he is, outside of maybe Michael Schumacher. You can, go tit for tat between them two, but yeah, he is a man possessed when the time comes, and I'm just happy to see him in my Ferrari red. Ended the season perfectly, able to come on with a good performance towards the end. And in terms of the future, sad to see Valtteri Bottas go, one of the greatest number 2 drivers in the history of this sport. Sad to see Guan Yu Zhou, I think, for a rookie, and the position he was put in with Stake, getting points in the previous race as well. Sad to see him go from the sport, because I think he deserved more.
Sad to see Joe go.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting to see Carlos in the Williams. I think Carlos, for me, is one of the top drivers in the sport. I think it's disrespectful that Red Bull and Mercedes didn't look at him as a driver. you both lost it, but it's for me, Carlos is sad that Mercedes and Red Bull didn't look at him as a driver. Obviously, being a young Red Bull driver, I think he would have been great competition for Max, and it would have been interesting to see him alongside Max in that Red Bull car. But yeah, Williams has got a great driver partnership now with Albon and Carlos going forward. It's going to be exciting to see what Ocon can do in his new team, and all the young drivers coming through as well. But yeah, it's a great end to the season. A lot of changes coming in the future, and yeah, man, Ford is on their way. A new team is on their way. The likes of Audi are on their way. So
Cadillac as well.
I can't wait.
Well.
Yeah, Cadillac is the new team as
It'll
well.
be interesting.
Yeah.
I made the point where they should bring like Bugatti in. They should bring. Sorry, guys, you just.
Go on, I don't want to interrupt. Sorry, it was just, it's such a bad joke, but it's funny at the same time. It's like worse than a dad joke. But go on.
But yeah, they should bring in like Lamborghini. That'd be interesting to F1. Lamborghini, Bugatti.
True.
They're bringing in Audi in like a couple of years. They're bringing in Cadillac. I think when is Cadillac coming next year, or the year after?
2026, I think Cadillac. They're going to be the extra team
Audi and
in the new
Cadillac.
regulation.
That'd
Yeah.
be nice. So also we remove Kick Sauber, gone.
No,
they are
they're
gonna-
adding an extra team.
Oh, so they're doing 20. So they're doing 21 teams now, right? Sorry, excuse me, not 21 teams.
That'd be
11
crazy.
teams.
21. Sorry, 22 drivers now on the grid.
Yeah.
So 11 teams. That's. Do you know what it is? I think that'd be nice, but they need to go. They need to go to bigger grids. They need to go to bigger racetracks. Especially if you're doing Monaco, yeah, it's not going to work. Monaco for 22 driver grid. I think for me, poor. It's like not poor, but it's very very. There's very less space to overtake. There's very less, all you need to do is finish in the pole. You need to finish in the podium, pole position in the podium, and you probably win the race. You just need to maintain your position, and your track position. But my biggest issue is you need to, what's it called? Yeah, I think 22 drivers makes sense. It's just whether they can fit in a lot of the grids, because there's very very small overtaking zones in some grids. So what we saw last week in Qatar, that's another example. It's gonna be even tougher to overtake, much tougher for the bottom teams to overtake. Assuming Audi's the top team, assuming Cadillac is a top team competing with Ferrari and Red Bull and McLaren, then we'll see. But I reckon it's gonna be. I reckon it might not work, having 22 teams. I don't know. What do you guys think? I just think it's not gonna be.
I think it's needed because there's more races. In terms of 11 teams, I think there should even be 12 teams in my opinion. I think there needs to be more space for new up and coming drivers. Maybe even have a team where it's just for the next level drivers, because right now you get to F2 and there's not really space for you to move up if no one's moving, if no one's getting removed from teams. And in terms of, there's so much talent in the sport. Eventually I want to see a female driver. Eventually I want to see more drivers of color being introduced to the sport. So maybe even have an all-female team. Who knows?
I was gonna mention this. Like I was gonna say this. We should do mixed. Like we should do like a mixed women's and men's race. Try it. That'd be fun. That would be really fun, because if you can drive on the same road, yeah. If you all can drive together on the same road, why can't you race against each other? It really doesn't make a difference for me personally, but that's a topic.
There has been female F1 drivers before, but 50, 60 years ago, if I'm not mistaken. I just want to say something real quick.
Bring it back.
I do agree with King. I also think from an entertainment standpoint, it would add a lot more value. Think about the chaos on the first lap if there were 22 different cars or 24 different cars. It'd just be more entertaining.
Sorry to interrupt you. The female that just won her Grand Prix should try and compete F1.
Yeah, I think they need to take the lead of something what Lewis Hamilton is doing and just find a pathway, a more proportionate pathway to allow drivers who are in F1 Academy or F3 to bridge the gap and be able to join Formula One. And also F1, one of the biggest differences between F1 today and 10 years ago is the sports reach. The sports reach and revenue is a whole different ballgame. I don't think 10 years ago it would even compare with some of the biggest sports. Today it is amongst them. Yeah.
It's very, very mixed. Like there's a lot of male and female F1 fans. So that's what I'm saying. We should try and mix it up. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but I think I completely agree with you. But in order to mix it up, I also think F1 needs to have a lot more pathways or opportunities, invest in all these lower community areas, lower income community zones, and parts all around the world, and from Asia to Africa, all the way to the depths of South America and up to Europe. Invest, because there are millions of kids, hundreds of millions of kids that would love to be a race car driver, but there is no pathway. Because most times kids will ask a parent, "Hey, I want to be a Formula One driver."
That's
Some people,
true. Sorry to interrupt you again, yeah. But
Yeah.
the only continent they don't go to is Africa. They
there's
go
no
to
race in Africa.
they go to North America, they go to Europe, they go to Asia, they go
Yeah.
to Australasia, but they don't go to Africa.
Oh.
And I think South Africa might be a perfect place to go and race, in my opinion.
Yeah, Hamilton said that he wouldn't retire until he races in Africa once. So he's gonna push for it. But no, I think there just needs to be a lot more investment into all these lower income community zones, and there needs to be less of an ambiguous, complicated, sophisticated, and very wealthy requirement to reach Formula One. Because Formula One, like King has made the point a lot, it's built on nepotism. It is really built on nepotism and lobbying. That's what Formula One has been built on historically. So we really need to capitalize on this new reach and this wider audience around the world, and also make it easier for middle income working class parents and kids to be like, hang on a minute, actually, if my kid wants to be a professional racing car driver, and they're very, very young, hopefully there is a straightforward, at least a bit of a blueprint on how to get there. Because if you go to a teacher in schools, most school teachers, I don't think, would even know how to get to Formula One, let alone some level of professional racing, because it's so far away and it's so detached from most of the world and most of the school curriculums. So there just needs to be, I think, a better blueprint, more investment, and easier access. So capitalize on Formula One.
They need to have more racetracks in a year. I think what we have right now is quite less.
24. This has been the most it's ever been in the Formula One season.
I get it, but if we're gonna have more drivers, I think we need to add on 2 more tracks. And we need to add on, because you know what it is?
Mhm.
It's also better to go to every single continent and more countries, because countries with reach, let's say F1 has a lot of reach in Thailand. Thailand would be a perfect place to go to come and race, because tourism levels are going to rise above the bar, right? You've also got countries like India that have a massive F1 reach. You've got countries like New Zealand, who have not seen F1 yet in a while. You've also got countries like South Korea, who have not seen F1 in a long time. Japan, who have not seen F1 in a long time. You've also got you have Singapore. Singapore is a massive reach. Singapore is the best country to go visit if you're gonna go watch F1, right? Personally for me, I think for what I'm seeing, Singapore is the biggest reach in terms of F1. Also, you've got the UK. I think there's 2 UK races in a year, if I'm not mistaken, or there's just one. Silverstone.
Just Silverstone. It was just that 1 year during the pandemic where they had the 70-year special.
The Silverstone's the most iconic in terms of, like, it's been there for years, and it's never gonna go away. You've also got US, Vegas, well, who else? Miami. You've also got what? Austin, Canada, Toronto, Vancouver. I think they go there, or Montreal. I can't remember where it was. Yeah. Then you've also got South America. You got Sao Paulo. Then you got Mexico. You know, they're going. The reach for F1 around the world is next to nothing. It is next to, like, bro. It's next to like I can't even put it to words. Like, the whole world pretty much watches F1. Like, almost the whole world watches the sport, yeah. And it's crazy because there's so many countries that just follow F1 but just miss out on their home country seeing it live in front of their face. Because you have Monaco, yeah. Monaco is the tightest. People say it's the most boring because it's got 78 laps and it's very hard to overtake. I hear it, but that's part of the challenge of F1, isn't it? It's part of the challenge. So that's what I'm saying. the reach for F1 is crazy, and I think you also need to look at like the countries I mentioned: Thailand, India, New Zealand. You need to look at countries like Japan, South Korea. These countries are F1 fanatics. They got Zhao Guan Yu, right, from China. Obviously, they already have for China. They have Yuki Tsunoda racing. Yuki Tsunoda is from Japan. They look at the amount of fans that would turn up for Yuki Tsunoda. I'm not sure if they still race in Japan, but the reach for F1 in Japan is crazy because of Yuki Tsunoda. You have drivers coming from from certain parts of the world. Alex Albon is half Thai. Imagine the what the reception will be like if he's coming to race here. And the new Thai driver that could be promoted to F1 soon. You know the Thai driver that's racing for F2 or F3, right? I can't remember his name yet. But imagine the reach for these countries if their drivers get promoted to F1 and their countries are not hosting it. Think about it, man. Real talk. But sorry, Augustia, sorry I interrupted you, bro. I just really wanted to get my point across. And make sure you finish everything you're saying before I interrupted you for all of them. I'm so sorry again.
No, I think you said it better than I could have. I completely agree with you. Capitalize. You have such a big opportunity, and opportunities like this sometimes die out. So just make sure to capitalize on it. Don't waste it, and make sure again when you again promote and push for more inclusivity and diversity on the grid, make sure it is properly done. Right? Make sure everyone is ready. Make sure you give everyone a fair opportunity, and make sure it's not built on nepotism and lobbying, but people are actually comprehensively given the right skills and experience to reach Formula One. So I completely agree with you. I have nothing else to say on that topic, but Formula One have to go to Africa because the market there is massive. I'm not sure why they stopped going to India, but they should also reinstate the race over there because India is the biggest market by far.
Mumbai.
Across
Bombay. Yeah. It's Bombay, right? People say it's the New York of India.
Yeah, it's a cash cow in the making. Go back to Sochi as well, Russia, whenever you can, and there's so many good places they can consider visiting.
Germany,
Hockenheim, reinstate that. Who knows? King, what do you make of this global push?
Yeah, I think ever since they started doing the stuff on Netflix, I think that's the Drive to Survive has added a whole new audience to Formula One, and it's allowed for a show with drama, with a lot of different things that for people who don't want to watch race to race, something that they can watch and understand what goes on in the background.
Don't forget Michael Schumacher's documentary as well.
Oh yeah. But I don't think that's added fans. I think Drive to Survive has been the main thing for fans in terms of new fans, because you get like a show where there's drama. You get to see the differences between race drivers. You get to see each individual team. You get special episodes for Ferrari and Mercedes and Red Bull, and I think ever since that's been a part of the sport, I think the fans have increased year on year, and in terms of diversity, it should not just be on the drivers, it's also off the field in all positions. I think when it comes to team principals, when it comes to the engineers, when it comes to the people, the stewards, when it comes to everything, I think there should be a much better way for people to get positions within Formula One when it comes to the teams, because you look at certain teams and they're only really picking guys like Ferrari, for example. They're only really looking at Italians. If they're not Italian, you're not really going to see them in their team. So maybe even within the teams itself needs to kind of look at ways to expand outside of their own kind of country reach. And also I think in terms of tracks going forward, I think the balance of tracks right now is really good. They do have a lot of tracks in America, which I'm not really 100% sure about, but because it's Liberty Media, it's an American company, so it makes sense on that kind of front why they're making so many tracks in America. They have Brazil, Mexico. They do have most of Europe. I think the only reason they really give a Monaco to stay around just because of the history and the class that comes with it. But yeah, certain parts of Asia deserves more tracks, and I think Africa maybe even deserves 2 races rather than one, because it's such a big continent that you could put one in the South Africa, and you can even put one in the likes of Nigeria, Ghana, places like that. There are many places that you can go to and inspire a next generation of African people to want to be a part of Formula One, not just as a driver, but in every aspect of it. Because the more you do that, the bigger the sport becomes, the more opportunities you create. Then it trickles down to F2, F3, F1 Academy as well, and allow for a pathway for these drivers from go-karting all the way to Formula One to have opportunities regardless of the money that they have in the bank account, or who their dad is, or their background. Because I think you're missing out on a lot of talent in multiple fields because you're too busy thinking about the money aspect of the sport, especially when it comes to drivers. Because if you look at the current 20 drivers in Formula One this season, you can't tell me that they're the best 20 drivers in the world. For me personally, because a lot of them are there not on merit. And if you actually did it based on merit, a couple of them would be moved on, such as a Lance Stroll or Sergio Perez, especially with the talent that you have in NASCAR, when you have GR3, and the talent that you have coming up through F2 and F3 that aren't given the opportunities because you're keeping these drivers because of nepotism, because they're from a certain country and you want that fan base, rather than, or or thirdly, because they have the financial backing behind them when they're showing that they're not good enough to be in this sport. So for me, I think Formula One needs to be cornered on having the best 2020 to 22 drivers on the grid, not the richest. And I think that's the biggest thing that the sport needs to do for going forward, because that will put it on another level where you actually get the best of the best competing against each other, and not having a couple scrubs on the end just because they got their money up.
Agreed. Completely agree.
Yeah, I mean, I hear that. I mean, the potential. There's a lot of potential in F1. There'll be drivers getting promoted soon. There'll be drivers going. There'll be drivers retiring. As sad as it is, drivers will enter F1 and retire from F1. It is what it is. But the potential is there. The reach is there. Global traction is definitely there, and F1 has the potential to be even bigger in the coming years. And I think with with more potential destinations and more potential new tracks added to the seasons, who knows? Who knows? It might just be up there with one of the most watched sports of all time. Well, it's not really a sport that you kick a ball like that, but it's a motor sport. Let's just put it that way. It's a motor sport, right? But it's definitely going to be interesting to see what happens in the coming years. But yeah, lads, one last topic we had to talk about before we wrap up. Just go quickly and briefly on this, yeah, so we can wrap it up. Yeah, Carlos Sainz to the Williams from Ferrari. King, I'll start with you on this one because you're a Ferrari fan. Just go quick and brief on this one, and just bid your farewell to Carlos Sainz.
Well, no, as I said earlier, he's been as you said earlier, he's been a great servant to Ferrari. I think he's one of the best drivers on the grid. It's just, the thing with the Williams is I don't think next season is going to be the season where you're going to look at Williams and say they're going to be there. But when the new regulations come, Williams is a team with big history, with championships under their belt, with potential to be a great team, and under the current leadership that they have, the guy that they got from Mercedes, I think, and the driver lineup, I think they have the potential to build a great car for 2026. So I think with Carlos, with Albon, I think Williams are an exciting team that have the possibility to be the best of the rest if they do it the right way with the drivers that they have. I think their lineup is better than Aston Martin and better than most of the other teams, because in terms of experience, them two are two of the most experienced drivers on the field in regards to, with all the young guys coming through as well for these other teams. So Williams will be an exciting place to be a part of, I think. And I think it's just a shame Carlos never got the opportunity to be in one of the big three still, because I think he's a big three level driver, and I think Mercedes decided to go with Kimi, and Red Bull decided to be silly. So it is what it is. But good luck, Carlos. Thank you. It's been a very smooth operation with you in Ferrari. Smooth operator. I love that. I loved every time. Vamos, all of that. And yeah, man. It's the end of an era, but it's hammer time in red right now. So, it's went from smooth operations to hammer time, and that's all I got to say about that, man. Good luck, Carlos. Williams are more than lucky to have you. You're one of the best on the grid.
Shout out my uncle. Yeah, he said today that he said to me during the race that he's preparing himself to go to Audi. So he's going to the Williams, and when Audi comes, he's going to go straight to Audi. I think this is like a step up from. I think he's going to go to the Williams, and then he's waiting for the Audi to enter F1. So that's where he's going to go to Audi. But we'll leave that talk for another time. Augustia, go on, bro. You can have your final say briefly, and yeah.
Yeah, I think I agree with everything King just said there, and you just said. It is a shame, because I do think Carlos Sainz is one of the very few drivers, push come to shove, that is able to win. We've seen one of the biggest differences between him and Charles Leclerc is mentality. Carlos Sainz can command the situation with his engineers. Charles Leclerc is sometimes very passive or submissive, dare I say it here. But eventually, if you have the opportunity to sign the greatest driver ever with the greatest team, you can't pass up on it no matter what the situation is. You simply can't. So it made sense. On the Mercedes point, I will continue to say that Kimi Antonelli, based on all the evidence we have and the history and how he's grown up in that environment, and he's been mentored by people like Lewis Hamilton and Toto Wolff and Valtteri Bottas, you cannot pass up on Kimi Antonelli, because if Mercedes don't take him, somebody else will. And he truly has the knowledge, the composure, the maturity, based on everything we've heard, to be the next Max Verstappen, the higher to Max's throne. So I understand. I do think the one that is more baffling or bewildering to me is Red Bull, because Red Bull should have easily signed Carlos Sainz. Everybody knew Checo Perez was going to be released. It was not a matter of if, it was a matter of when. The fact that it's taken them to the end of the season is crazy. But Carlos Sainz should be the second driver at Red Bull, and that would have been those four teams. Imagine a Max Sainz with the Ferrari lineup we have, the McLaren and the Mercedes lineups, or at least those top three teams, would have maybe been the best three-way fight in F1 history. Now, I'll just add something really quickly here. Checo Perez, if rumors are to be true, which logically they have to be true, he will be relieved of his role very, very soon. And it seems like Liam Lawson will be his replacement. That, to me, is very, very bizarre, because nothing against Lawson. A talented rookie. We have seen he has shown signs and glimpses of excellence. But Yuki Tsunoda has been the far better driver. Even just head-to-head this season, he's far more experienced. He's been integrated into the role at Red Bull Academy far longer and better. If it isn't Carlos Sainz, and it's between Yuki and Liam,
Also,
you have to pick Yuki Tsunoda. Like, by every metric, he's been the better driver, and he is more fit for that role. Also, he's a wild card.
I like Albon as well. Could go back. Should go back to McLaren, Red Bull.
I mean, he could, but I think just for it's easier for Red Bull and Yuki Tsunoda for this abrupt change, because he's already integrated in their setup and their academy with the engine. He understands it completely. He's close to Max as well. So I don't know why you wouldn't sign Yuki and Liam, but then again, I don't know. I don't know what they're cooking at Red Bull. They seem to be on the down, so they need to quickly reassess things, because Max Verstappen as well, just look for the future. 4 championships in a row. some would say there's no reason why he stopped, but we've seen throughout sporting history from people like Bjorn Borg, for example, when you're at the top, sometimes you can stop before you break the records just because you lose interest or more likely you have other priorities. Ekevin, you mentioned something to me in chat earlier. Max is obviously going to be a father. He likes sim racing a lot more. He loves playing FIFA. He loves a more low-key life these days, and he's already made it very clear he doesn't intend on being in Formula One post 2028. So Red Bull, two big things, by the way. Make the right second driver decision, and make sure you give the car at least a capable car, because if you don't, Max Verstappen can easily be out the door. So that's what I have to say.
Look long term, I hear that completely, and I don't think Max Verstappen will be out by 2028. I think it's just a rumor. I think it's just a fake rumor.
No, he himself, I think, has said he doesn't see himself being here post 28, but things can change, of course.
I think he will be. I think, do you know what it is? I might be sneaky and say he wants to race a Ferrari before he goes, because it's written in the stars, isn't it? He's a Ferrari fanboy. He wants to race in the Ferrari one day. Who knows? We'll see him in the Tifosi, and yeah. Hopefully Carlos Sainz does return though one day. Hopefully he does return. I would love to see him back in the Tifosi one day. I'd love to see him there. Him and Max Verstappen partnership duo, and when Charles Leclerc does eventually move on and Lewis Hamilton moves on, would be nice. Would be nice to watch, wouldn't it? And obviously, one day or someday we'll see a full Thai team. Alex Albon and another Thai driver would be nice, wouldn't it? A Thai team racing in F1. We'll see. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be really interesting. You did mention also about Max Verstappen not racing beyond 2028. Time will tell. And like I said, it's what it is. We'll see. And yeah, lads, anything you got to say before we wrap up? Any final thoughts? Any final words? King, Augustia, anything?
To those watching, if you're interested, I think we'll be back later this week, Ekevin, right? To do the F1 review. So
might do next week, to be honest, because this week there's more football and then we'll do Champions League and we'll do Premier League. I think we'll come back next week.
If you're watching and you like listening to us, the only way to find out when we do the F1 review is follow and subscribe. AN Sports is close to 100 subscribers. Get 100 subscribers on this channel by the end of the year.
100 goal before the end of the year, man. I would love to. Then next year's monetization. This year it's just get to 100 subs, and then next year monetization time. So yeah, let's actually answer this question before we go. Whose career would you rather have, Lando Norris or Charles Leclerc? Obviously, you answered it earlier. I'd go with Lando Norris, obviously, because he won the championship. It's the same as answering whose career would you rather have right now, Jason Tatum or Luka Doncic? Jason Tatum, because he won the NBA championship, hasn't he?
Yes, I agree. You didn't have to point that out, okay?
Lando Norris.
Very mean of you, Ekevin. Very mean of you.
I'm just giving an example. I'm not taking any I'm not throwing shade at Luka or anything. I'm just giving.
I know. I'm playing with you. It's just like Messi and Ronaldo. Whose career would you rather have? The one with the World Cup.
Messi. Even though I'm a massive Ronaldo fan, like the World Cup in it, but he's still not my GOAT. It's Cristiano Ronaldo. But we'll save that topic for another day. King. Lando Norris, isn't it?
That's a very close one because I think they both haven't won world titles each. They've both had amount of wins. I think this is the first season Lando's had a good season in terms of wins and stuff like that. I don't think before this season he won a race. No, before this season he hadn't won a race. So, all things considered,
Lando should be.
I would say Lando just because I think with McLaren he has a home, and I think because the way Zach Brown views him as his number one guy. Whereas Charles, I don't think he's going to be at Ferrari forever. I don't think that's the case with him. I think it's more likely you're going to see Lando stay McLaren in the long run rather than Charles at Ferrari.
I can see Charles racing in a Mercedes in the future. I can see it. I can see it happen. But this will be more of an interesting question. I'll kind of spice it up a bit. Who's got the higher ceiling?
I like that.
Who's got the higher ceiling because Lando Norris right now has just won his first constructors, right, with McLaren, and obviously all eyes on him because he's now gonna gain interest from, let's say, maybe one day. Let's just say Ferrari does come in for him. I'm dreaming here, but let's just say Ferrari does come in, right? Let's just say maybe Mercedes in the future, because the saying goes, leaving McLaren to Mercedes might just be a bit of a mistake. Somewhere along the lines of someone said that to Lewis Hamilton, if I'm not mistaken. You can quote me if you want. But someone said along the lines of moving from McLaren to Mercedes might just be the biggest mistake. Well, it's not. It's not, because look at what Lewis has done. So definitely Lando Norris is one to watch for the future. But the fact that Charles Leclerc is in the Ferrari and he's got Lewis Hamilton racing alongside him to compete for the championships next year, I'd have to say the ceiling might be Charles Leclerc, because he's been in more fights than Lando Norris. I think Lando Norris is just his first year of experiencing competing, and he's done well. Charles Leclerc has got more experience. As of now, I think the ceiling for me, it'll be Charles Leclerc. That's what I think. Ceiling wise, Charles Leclerc. But if you're talking about legacy and career right now, Lando Norris. I'll go to King first on this one. What do you think?
If in terms of career, if it's just based on F1, then to be honest, it's actually Charles who has the better career if you actually look at overall in terms of F1, because he has more race wins. He also won F2, which Lando didn't. So
to be fair, the Constructors' Championship does kind of separate it for now.
I think it's because the question is, whose career would you personally have, not who has been better throughout their careers, because that's obviously Leclerc.
Yeah. Obviously,
but if it's whose career would you rather have, I'd take the title.
But whose ceiling is higher? Sorry,
whose ceilings? What's the question?
No, finish off your point first, and I'll ask you.
No, what was the question?
Who's got the higher ceiling, Charles Leclerc or Lando Norris? Firstly, for me, it's Charles Leclerc.
It's very close. I think Charles is just above him in terms of ceiling, because obviously Charles won the F2. Lando didn't. Charles has won more races so far than Lando, and he's done it in different seasons. I think the way Ferrari's going and the trajectory of Ferrari looks better than McLaren. For me personally, we haven't really seen McLaren be a team that can go back to back to back to back. And I think with Lewis, you put him alongside an elite driver, which gives him more experience and more knowledge that Lando isn't going to get from an Oscar. So I think in terms of ceiling and everything like that, I think Charles, with the knowledge that Lewis can give him, have a far better career, I think. But it's very close with them two, because them two are second and third behind Max when it comes to their generation of drivers, kind of thing. Carlos is a bit older than that generation, so he's in his kind of own field. But in terms of those, Max, Lando, Charles, is very close between Charles and Lando. It's whiskers away of who will have the better career overall. But I'm gonna go with Charles. Just.
Justia?
It's so tough. It's an unbelievable question because they're so even. I think if you break them down as drivers, qualifying, Charles Leclerc takes that. He's the far better qualifier. I think in the wet, I would also take Lando Norris, just because I point out, I love this example. It was Spa 2021. I know he crashed in quali, but he has shown his pace to be at the very top during some wet qualifyings and races. I think Lando has better output in the wet. Charles has better output in quali. Race pace, it's so even. I guess you would say Leclerc is better at race starts, but Lando Norris could be a better front runner. I mean, it's so close. There's so many different ways to break it down. I will just agree with King, though, bottom line, that Leclerc has a better ceiling and U2 Ekibin, but just because Ferrari are a more stable constructor than McLaren, I think going forward, and that's why Leclerc is better, but things can change very quickly in Formula One.
So you say Charles Leclerc as well?
Yeah, but I think it's a toss of a coin.
Fair enough. You guys have said all your points today. Anything missing that you guys want to get out there before you close out? Anything that you haven't said that I interrupted you about earlier? Because I always interrupt people. I'm sorry about that. Anything else that you want to get out before you wrap up?
Yeah, one last thing. It's going to be exciting to see Kimi in the Mercedes. It's going to be exciting to see Oscar Piastri grow as well. I think he's another driver that we need to look at in that McLaren. I think he's proven a lot this season, keeping up with Carlos and being the second driver to Lando to allow them to actually win the championship. Where Sergio has fallen, Oscar Piastri has risen in that sense. So yeah, there's a lot of great drivers in the grid, and it's going to be whoever has the better car and the better team overall will be the best. But I could easily see an Oscar Piastri winning a championship before Lando, just because of how great of a driver I look at him as. Or you could see a Kimi doing it, because if the Mercedes get their car right, then he could be one to look at. Even George Russell is another name in that kind of group of young drivers that you have to look at as well. So it's a great time to be a part of Formula One. There's a lot of great young drivers, except for Lance Stroll. I'm going to keep on hating on Lance Stroll for the rest of my time as a Formula One fan. I don't know why he's in the sport, but yeah, man. And obviously the greatest youngster of all, just like Augustia said, Fernando Alonso, the Rookie of the Year every year. Unbelievable.
Amazing, man. He
Unbelievable.
will be the Rookie of the Year for the next century, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
He's one of one, man.
Driver of the day today, Charles Leclerc. It's got to be. I mean, he came from 19 to finish third. He's got to be driver of the day, isn't he?
I would put him third. I'd put him behind Lewis and Lando, just because not taking anything away from Leclerc, but
with the
he was
grid
very
penalty though, with the 10 grid penalty as well, you got to take that into consideration. 10 grid penalty plus the time deleted, and he finished in the podium. Like, that's double the punishment, and he still finished in the podium. So driver of the day.
Yeah, but I mean, we're purely evaluating driver of today, not of yesterday. And I think Leclerc was very good on lap one. He capitalized, but was also very fortuitous. Whereas with Lewis Hamilton and Lando Norris, that was more on merit across the race. So I think Lando and Lewis pip him because it was more on merit, whereas Leclerc was fortuitous in a way. And I think Lando and Lewis really maximized the best they did. Same with Leclerc, but to a lesser degree, because his was aided by external factors, whereas Lando and Lewis was full on, complete, based on their own pure ability and merit. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think we said everything we have to say.
Yep.
King, driver of the day, Charles Leclerc.
No, I think I would just give it slight edge to Lewis. For me, maybe even Lando. I think Charles' first lap was a bit of luck involved, but I think we saw a lot of great moves that he made over the course of the race to get up to the podium position as well, and great moves from Lewis, even the last move he made. And then, even though you think it's easy what Lando did to be up front and every lap and not make mistakes and keep the Ferraris at bay as he did, that makes him a great as well. So it's a very close tie between them three. I'm just gonna give it to Lewis Hamilton because he's the GOAT, and that last lap move was absolutely brilliant to watch. So for me, just ahead of Charles and Lando Lewis. So Lewis the GOAT.
So remind me of who got the final extra point for the fastest lap again?
Nobody did. It was Kevin Magnussen. He just hit it on lap 57, if I wasn't mistaken,
Right.
and won to the fastest. And in his final ever Formula One race, he got it.
well deserved. I mean, that's the last ever. That's gonna be the last ever fastest lap point anyone's ever gonna get, really, for maybe a long time until they bring it back.
True, very true.
So yeah. All right, lads. I think we're gonna wrap it up here. There's 18 of you watching. Please make sure you click the link on that I've shared on Twitter and subscribe. Because I'm nearly reaching 100 subs. Make sure you like the video. Make sure you subscribe. We're doing F1 content. Next week we'll do the F1 review, season review next week. I'll be back tomorrow with the Premier League review for the weekend. I don't think I'll be talking about United because I did a whole hour show yesterday about United. So if any United fans watching, make sure you go and check the one out and make sure you like the video as well. I did a whole hour ranting about United, ranting about my football club, and also we stayed a whole an hour 15 minutes. Talking about F1, so please make sure you show us some support. Make sure you like the video, subscribe, show these two love. Make sure you keep respectful in the chat as well. Anyone being disrespectful, you'll be blocked and banned. Pretty simple as. And yeah, lads. And then coming up tomorrow, we got the NBA Cup preview. So make sure you guys are here for that. And yeah, shout your things out, guys. Shout your social medias out. Shout your whatever you got coming up, and yeah, let them know where they can find you. Gustia?
I'll just be on here for the time being, so you can catch me on AN Sports. If you want to hear us talk again, the only way to do that is follow and subscribe. So please do that, because I'll repeat, this is one of the only places in the sporting world where you get authentic analysis and unfiltered content. Ekavin is not backed by...
Not the only place, but...
No, I said one of the only places. Ekavin is marketing. You got to market yourself, because it's true.
You're marketing me.
Whatever it is, look, we speak facts here. I speak facts here. So,
True.
This isn't funded by big money. No big lobbying, no nepotism. This is just straight from the heart and the truth. So please follow and subscribe. Get AN Sports to 100 subscribers, and
before 2024 ends,
future looks bright.
The F1 season is flown by very, very fast, man. And next season's gonna fly by really fast as well. So let's embrace it. Let's enjoy the roller coaster next year. King, last F1 review of the year, of the season.
Mm-hmm.
Shout your thing out. And let me know what we got coming up.
I'm gonna be on AN Sports for the foreseeable. Anytime you want to talk sports, I'm there. AK Academy. Content will come out soon.
Yeah.
Not sure. I don't have any dates for it, because I keep saying week on week, but it's just about
It's all right,
about starting it. It's about starting it. But when I start, I'll let you guys know on
Also,
AN Sports. But yeah, no, just subscribe to AN Sports. Road to 100. Great channel, great content. I love the stuff on the football. I always watch the football content as well when I get the chance to.
I was at the very, very start as well, bro. I was at the very, very start as well. Like, I was not willing to upload content. I had my YouTube channel there, but I wasn't willing to upload anything. But I did eventually, and look, nearly at 100 subs now. 2024 is closing out. Make sure you guys get me to 100 subs before 2024 closes. Might do a Q&A when I reach 100 subs. Who knows? Might do one regarding sports, regarding personal. Let me know. Let me know what you guys want. And you'll see more of these two on the stream. Tomorrow we'll be doing Premier League and NBA, so be there for that. Champions League this week, might be doing Champions League talk as well this week. So I'm gonna try and get a Champions League someone who's in the Champions League. Unfortunately, not Manchester United, but yes, I will be doing Champions League and Europa League talk. So European football will be there. And the Club World Cup draw is just concluded. Something I forgot to say as well. Nani's announced his retirement from football. Sad retirement, Nani. United legend, cult hero, whatever you call it. Got us that Champions League win in 2008. And yeah, final F1 race of the year. It's been fun. It's been good to talk about F1. Next year, might be doing some watch-alongs as well. So you'll be seeing more of these guys on the playback. So make sure you follow my playback at AN Sports, people. Click the link for the YouTube to watch the video back. and like and subscribe. You'll be seeing more. You'll be seeing me on more of Sarcasm City TVs, or maybe a bit more of his shows. We'll see in the future what we do. You'll see me on King's channel when he uploads his first video. I'll put his link in the title, so make sure you go and click subscribe to his channel, and then his first video will be out very soon. And yeah, that's gonna be us for the season. Season review coming soon. Make sure you tune in, like, share, subscribe, all the good stuff. Forza Ferrari, we're out. Take care. Have a good evening. Peace.